Welcome to the Be Student Podcast, and thank you for joining me. On today's episode, we're going to be sitting down with Congressman Maxwell Frost. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship, what gives him hope, and how to navigate across intergenerational leadership. So let's get started. Today, we are privileged to have Central Florida's Congressional District 10 Congressman, the Honorable Congressman Maxwell Frost. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I have been looking forward to this conversation so much, and not because I'm going to give everybody a word of warning. I don't really want to talk about politics on this podcast. You might be ready for a break for that too, because you guys have had your fair share of it. But I really love your story. And on this podcast, we call it the Be Student Podcast because we like to explore the B side to people's records. You're young, and I don't know if you remember a B side of a record.
Oh, I do, yeah.
Are you a vinyl guy?
Well, yeah, my dad owns an online record store.
Oh,
so
thank God.
if you ever go to my office in DC, I have a stellar record player, and we actually have a record swap when you walk in.
What?
So we have a band book swap, and then we have a record swap where you can come in, you can take one free, you can leave one. We have records spinning at the office all the time. Very familiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is kind of explore the B side to your record today.
That's what it means. I thought it meant B student, like B, like B's in class.
Oh, it kind of is.
Because I was a B student.
Well, it's funny that
BC.
you say that because B students rule the world,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So I made the mistake of being an A student. And the counsel I gave to my kids, who are both college age, one's just graduated, one's still in, I said, if you're faced with getting the B and going to the bar, you should get the B and go to the bar instead of getting the A, because at my age, guess what? Nobody says to me, hey, Betsy, what was your GPA in college? They say to me, what was your favorite bar at UF, right?
There you go.
So anyway, that's part of the reason why we want to explore the B side. It's just much more interesting. And you have a great story, so I'm looking forward to connecting our viewers and listeners with that today. But I want to start with kind of talking about the fact that you are the youngest congressperson to ever be elected to the United States Congress.
In modern history.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't run to be the youngest, right? I ran on issues I believe in, ending gun violence, just issues that I've been fighting for since I was 15 years old. And when I got into the race, originally, like a few months before I got in, I had some friends who told me, Maxwell, Val Demings is running for higher office. You should look at running for her seat. And I said, no. I was like, you guys are crazy. Like, I'm 24 years old at the time. Right. And I don't think, that makes sense. No one's going to believe in me. No one's going to think I have the experience. No one's going to vote for me. And I actually realized that there were people in the community who had more faith in me than I had in myself. And I started having conversations, first with my family, then my friends, then people in my life, then organizers I had worked with. And I found out I have some support here. And I felt like it was enough support to start my campaign. So I launched my campaign for Congress, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, right? I ran for a year and a half, fell on very, very tough financial struggles because,
campaigning is a full-time job on top of your full-time job. Yeah,
exactly. And actually what I had done is, because I was working in politics, I had to quit my job because there's a conflict of interest.
Correct.
So I didn't have an income. I thought I had enough money in the bank. I didn't have enough money in the bank. My rent got hiked up so much in the middle of my campaign. I experienced homelessness. I started driving Uber so I could pay some bills.
Okay, hold on, y'all.
Everything.
A United States congressman that's driving Uber during his campaign. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I had to because originally, I was a server at Olive Garden for a little bit. And I was a good server. So I was like, I'll just go back to serving during the campaign.
Have you thought about going back to Olive Garden and working a shift?
Working a shift? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Hey,
that'd be pretty cool. Celebrity host night or server night.
It's all about the upsell.
I was upselling. What was your key upsell?
Was
it wine or desserts?
It was a drink. So when I was working, I always had a hard time with desserts, but I always did a great job with the drinks. So they used to have like a 5 for $5.
Okay.
Where it was like 5 drinks that were $5 each.
Ooh.
And they were like spiked lemonade and like Long Island iced tea, stuff like that.
Okay.
And I would sell those so much. I'd come by, someone's, drink is almost gone. I'd be like, all you have to do is look.
Okay, Darden execs who
All
are
you,
listening to this,
all you
let's
gotta
get the
do is
congressman back on shift selling 5 for 5s.
I would sell more from being like distantly far away from the table than I would being close to the table. I just kind of
Really? Oh, I
that
love it.
that right there,
So
$5.
I learned how to sell as a server when I
Mhm.
was in college. You ready for what year it was?
Okay.
1988.
Okay.
All right. And I learned how to sell, and I figured out where I worked was close to Rollins College, and there'd be these guys that would come in on their parents' credit cards, and I was like, "Have y'all done around the world beers?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "We can do a beer from all these countries, and you can drink around the world tonight." And they're like, "Sounds great, right?" So
Nice.
$150 later, I'm
Perfect.
getting 20% of that. And
Yeah,
I was like, wait a
exactly.
minute, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I love that you did that. Okay, so driving Uber, working the Olive Garden,
Well,
people are believing in you.
yeah, I wanted to go back to serving, and I realized it wouldn't work because in campaigning, there's just so much spontaneous stuff, right?
And
You
stuff
get
at night.
yeah, there's a meeting going on. We just found out about it. We gotta go.
Yeah.
And I don't like to make a commitment I can't keep. So I
Right.
didn't want to start working at a restaurant, having to call out of shifts, right? Something would suffer. So that's why I chose Uber, so I could have a little bit more flexibility.
And were
Getting
you
the
telling your
log off.
fares, hey, I'm driving you
No,
while
I
I'm running
wasn't.
for Congress?
My campaign manager was like, "You need to carry some lit and do it." I was like, "I'll carry literature, but I don't want to get fired from the app or something
Right.
by soliciting."
What's your rating as a driver?
Oh, it was very high. It was very high.
I love it.
Very high. The best rating.
All right, so let's go back to when you were 15. You said since you were 15, these are issues you cared about. What
Yeah.
happened when you were 15 that made you care about these things?
Well, I went to the Osceola County School for the Arts for middle school and high school. My
Okay.
dad's a musician. He plays here locally. If you've ever been to what was then Pleasure Island, downtown Disney
Okay.
Springs, you've seen my dad perform. And so
What's his instrument?
music, he's a steel pan player.
What?
He plays steel pan and he plays conch shell, but he's also a pianist and a trombone player.
Okay.
Yeah,
this
he's
is amazing.
He's a stellar
Where do we catch his show
multi-instrumentalist.
now?
He doesn't perform as often anymore. He's, coming into retirement,
Maybe if
enjoying
we
his
get
stuff.
enough comments in the
Yeah,
comment
you can see
section
him
on
perform.
YouTube, we could call out for him
He's
to do
the
it.
conch man,
Okay.
so if you see him perform, you see him perform, but he's a very serious musician.
Okay.
And he was actually part of the first graduating class of the University of Miami for the master's degree in studio composition writing.
Oh my
So
God,
he's
serious.
He's a serious musician, and my life changed in the second grade when he gave me a drum set for Christmas.
Okay.
And it wasn't the drum
That's
set.
a dad who loves you to have a drum
Oh,
set
yeah,
come
yeah.
in his house. All
Well,
right.
that's a mom who loves all of us because my mom allowed my dad to have a studio in the middle of the house. That's
We
how it
talk
was my
about
whole life.
moms on almost every episode of this
Yeah.
podcast, so I'm glad here we are a
Yeah,
few minutes
so
in talking
thank
about
my
moms.
mom.
I love it.
And so, but it wasn't the drum set that changed my life. It was he got me private lessons
Okay.
with the drum set, and that's what
Okay.
it was. Because a lot of people get their kids instruments, and it's like whatever. But when you get them lessons, and they can like learn and be held accountable, learning how to learn, learning a soul craft, understanding what it means to get good at something, that's really what changed my whole life, and I became a serious drummer. I auditioned for the school, got in. I know this is gonna be wild to hear from a politician, but I wasn't the most well-behaved kid growing up. And so in
What
sixth
was
grade,
it? Was it passing notes or fidgeting or talking?
it was talking.
It was talking.
I always have to tell people because I wasn't like hit. I wasn't getting in the fights. You know
How
what I
did
mean?
they rate conduct back then? Because I know in Orange County Public Schools
Mhm.
growing up, you got a 1, 2, or 3, and if you got a 3, you were getting a referral to the principal.
Oh, my school's very strict. Like one fight, you're out. Like you're out.
Okay.
One kind of
because it
fight,
was
you're
like a charter school, right?
It's
or
a public, it's
magnet.
it's a
Yeah.
public magnet art
Okay.
school. So you have to audition to get in. You have to keep your grades at a certain
So
level.
zero
to stay in.
tolerance for messing around.
There is zero tolerance for
Okay.
messing. And I actually did something very stupid in middle school, and I should have been kicked out. But the vice principal at the time, Mr. Lisby, pulled me into the office, and he said, he was like, you're supposed to get expelled.
Right.
But he was like, I see
But
something.
I know you're
in
going
you.
to be United States
No,
Congressman one day.
Yeah, I know, right?
So
I mean, he said, I see something in you, and we're going to keep you at the school, but I got a different punishment. And he actually passed away last year. Yeah, he passed away of cancer. So I read his name in the congressional record.
Rest in peace, Mr. Lisby.
Yeah, rest in peace, Mr. Mitron Lisby. He has the coolest first name, Mitron. I read his name in the congressional record and sent it to his family. And so yeah, rest in peace, Mr. Lisby. But either way, to your original question, I was in the jazz band. My school didn't have any kind of sports.
Okay.
So the jocks were the jazz band.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think
And
the
I was a
jocks
jazz
are
band
still the jazz
drummer.
band. The
Yeah,
older
yeah.
you get, the more it's the jocks of the
Exactly.
jazz band. I
No,
love it.
there were no jocks. But like, you know, we were like the band, we would travel the whole country to
Okay.
represent the school.
Wow.
So I was in the jazz band, and it was, you know, the thing that you're, you know, I was proud to be a part of. And before the jazz band concert, my friends and I would go to the Loop, the Fridays at the Loop, which is in Kissimmee, and we would load up on a ton of junk food. We're there eating, and this silence falls across the restaurant. And we're looking at each other like, what's going on? We look at the television screens, and we see somebody walked into an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, and murdered all those teachers and children. And I grew up in South Chase and Hunters Creek, right? Gun violence is not part of my day-to-day life growing up, and seeing those images shook me to my core. And when I went to the concert that night, I played the worst show I've ever played in school because I was anxious. I kept looking at the theater door behind me, scared somebody would do the same thing. And since there was that moment that I decided I wanted to get involved in the fight to end gun violence. And so I ended up traveling to DC a few weeks later for the memorial. And it was there that I met all these kids my age, 15, 14, 16, who had lost their siblings, their mothers, their fathers, and seeing people my age with the demeanor of much older folks because they had just gone through that traumatic thing. That was my call to action. And I came back home, and I started to organize and started to redirect my energy from talking too much in class and getting in trouble to organizing people to end gun violence in school. And it was off to the races.
So did you start a club in your school?
Yeah, I started a club organization called FIDA, Florida Youth Takes Action.
Okay.
And so I started that. It was okay, but you know, I had just gotten involved, and what I really should have done was found people who've been doing the work and got involved with them.
Partnership is always the better way forward. Yeah.
Well, Gen Z is a very entrepreneurial generation, and it's a great thing. But the double-edged sword in the advocacy world is there's a lot of young people who want to start their own organization, which is great. And that's the first thing I thought of. I need to start an organization. I got a logo, I did a website, all this. And what I found very quickly, though, about in the organizing work is it's about organizing people and about building coalitions. And you don't do that.
That's a numbers game.
That's a numbers game. It's addition, not subtraction. And you don't do it by coming into a space you've never done anything in before and just starting your own thing, right? Like, and so for me, I did FIDA for like 5 months with my best friends, and then we decided to kind of put it to bed, and we started organizing with other people in Osceola County.
How did you get your friends to take this as seriously as you were taking it?
You know, throughout my high school, middle school career, and even to this day, I would always do these random projects and random things, and my friends were just always there to like be a part of them. And the craziest one I did in my life was running for Congress, and my friends were there, and they were part of it, and they were my first volunteers. And when during Orlando Pride, when I wanted to put a stage on a flatbed semi-truck, my best friends were with me at 6 a.m. morning of Pride, building it with me. And they were the musicians on the float, and they are to this day. So it was maybe just another thing that I said, hey, what do you guys think about doing something on this? And they were like, yeah, we're in. And they supported me. And then I made new friends and met new people who were really into it as well. And then I ran for student government president at my school, and we just started doing a lot of that work in the student government instead.
Yeah. So was there one person or one moment that was a triggering moment that you said in your campaign, of all the people that are supporting me and saying, yes, I can do this? Was there a watershed moment when you said it was when that person wrote me a check, or that person said, yes, that I knew I could go forward?
I mean, it's the culmination of a lot of different moments, but there was one I always think about. And obviously, when I first got in, I'm in a race with 10 people, right? 2 former members of Congress.
And that's just on the Democrat side.
That was just on the Democratic side, yeah. Two former members of Congress, a state senator who'd been in for a decade, a wide field that I thought was actually really cool. A lot of people would kind of disparage it in a lot of our debates. They'd be like, this is a crazy field. But I said, I always thought this is what a democracy is about. We have a teacher in this field. We have former politicians in this field. We have a nutritionist. We have a lawyer. That's what this is about. I always thought it was a really cool thing that we had such an expansive field. But either way, I wasn't taken seriously, of course, when I first launched. And for me,
they didn't know about the drink specials at
they
the
didn't know.
Olive
They
Garden.
did not know what I did at
They
Olive
didn't
Garden.
know.
And I knew we had to show that we were a serious campaign. And I had worked on many campaigns before that. I got hired full-time in politics straight out of high school, 18 years old. First campaign I worked was Hillary Clinton's. And so I was already like getting super involved in politics, but I had taken that knowledge and put it in my campaign. We got a lot of volunteers very quickly, knocking doors. But the big thing about campaigns is raising money, right? You have to be able to raise money.
You do.
And usually in a finance operation for a campaign, it's a very closed door thing. It's like you're a finance director, you're making calls, you're trying to get money. And for me, I was like, okay, I can't really control whether or not you're going to make a donation to me after I give you my pitch. What I can control is my pitch and how many calls I get out. And the math was simple. X amount of calls, I would usually make about this much an hour.
We
for
call
the
that
campaign.
a conversion rate in marketing.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I was like, and I thought my pitch was great. So I was like, but we're not making enough. We're not bringing enough resources in the campaign to pay for the campaign. So what do we need to do? So we need to make more calls. And so I was like, why don't we bring our volunteers into this operation? I know it's taboo, but imagine if we had 5 people making calls from 5 lists. We could get done in one day what it would take me a week to do. And they can just shove the phone in my face and I'll act like I dialed the number. So that's what we did. We did that for months and months, and we ended up raising $409,000 in Q4.
Not bad. Okay.
Which was way more than everybody else combined.
Right.
And
were you doing it on small contributions primarily?
Small contributions.
That's a big deal.
Yep. So it was all small. 95% of all my contributions in that race were under $40.
Wow.
So we were making a lot of calls for a small amount of money. Now, as the campaign went on, we were able to make bigger asks, right?
Yeah.
And now as a sitting member, I'm always doing bigger asks. But even to this day, the 95% of my contributions are under $40.
So my mom was an elected official in Orange County for 30 years. And she said the $5 contributions are even more valuable than the $1,000 ones.
Exactly. And a big reason why is a lot of the big contributions, you'll get one, right? And then you'll, call the person again in a year or 2 years. But the small dollar donors who power our campaign, a lot of them have made a commitment. And they've said, I'm going to give you $5 every month. And what that allows us to do is really plan out
and rely on having those dollars.
And so I'm in a position, and I feel very blessed that I'm one of the top fundraisers for my campaign in the state. But the reason why is I tell people, I'm not a lot of politicians, right? You raise the money and then you keep it in the bank in case you have a race, right? We spend our money. Like we spend like we're like an organization. Why? We're spending on programs. We have a year-round program where we hire young people. We teach them how to do this whole political thing, and we put them out to actually do it. And we're trying to build a bench, but we pay them. And we pay them because not everyone can afford to do it for free.
Right.
And we want to make sure that in 10 years, when a young 25-year-old person gets elected,
server from the Olive Garden
gets elected, it's not as big of a deal because it happens all the time. Because young people are seen as part of the political process, not the exception to it. And so for me, a big part of that was, instead of going out and trying to get other people to do this, I thought, why don't I just do it for my campaign? And we knew we'd have to raise a lot more money to do it, but it's our small dollar donors who help us pay the young people, teach them how to do this work, and then go out and do it however they want to do it, right? And I'm really proud of that.
Well, you should be. I think it's interesting when we started talking about the B side of this, record. We love going into the B side because what actually happens when we look at people's B side, we go to the B side of business, right? So what can we learn about entrepreneurship from a political campaign? Well, you had conversion rate, right? We have scaling. And so you weren't getting the traction you needed with the model you had. So you scaled, and you scaled successfully. Now you scaled successfully to the operational level. I mean, that's pretty impressive stuff, right? And my mom ran for office first time in 1986. We were hand silk screening her T-shirts in the garage. Wow. She was an outsider. She didn't have big dollars coming in. She had small dollar donors and ended up getting elected several times over 30 years in Orange County because she understood the value of that small dollar donor, right? And so I think we all get dazzled with big contributions and PAC donors and all this kind of stuff, but it is that grassroots piece that actually powers something like that. The other thing you're doing is you're doing continuous recurring revenue, which is the holy grail of any kind of successful business. So there's a lot to be learned about business from your campaign here.
You know, it's so interesting too, because I feel like in another life, I'm definitely a business owner. As I was growing up, I was always starting little businesses. I'm sorry, IRS. Well, you know, just little things as a kid. Garage sale day was a big day for me. I look forward. There's 2 in Hunters Creek a year.
Okay. Hunters Creek is a little bit outside of Orlando for those of us who are listening.
No, it's South Orlando.
It's South Orlando? Okay. South Orlando.
Yeah,
okay.
But it's right on the edge. It's right
because
on
we have listeners from around the world, so we want to tell them where
Hunters Creek. Yeah, it's a community in South Orlando. I grew up initially in South Chase, which is right next to it, and then my parents ended up moving us to Hunters Creek, which is, you know, it's middle class, more like higher middle class.
A lot of people who work in the tourist industry live there.
Live in Hunters Creek, and it's a beautiful community. And I remember in 2012 or something, maybe it was in 2009. It was the 21st best community in the country to live in, and they put a sign up
by what? I love it.
I don't know, but I love that they put a sign up. It's the 21st best place. So either way, it's a very calm suburbia, and that's where I grew up. But we had a garage sale day twice a year. And that was my day. Like, I would figure out what I could put out and sell. And originally when I was younger, I was just taking stuff from the house, selling it outside. But then I got really into food. And I asked my dad for a loan of $100. And I went and I bought a little hot dog roller machine. And then I used the extra money to buy hot dogs. And then I would just sell hot dogs. And then the next one, I asked for another loan. I paid all these loans back. I asked for another loan of $50. And then I added a little coffee thing. And either way, after doing this for a few years, I had a full concession setup. This stuff is still my parents' house to this day. I have a cotton candy machine, hot dog roller machine, a coffee. I have all this stuff. And then I started hiring my friends to go do it with me. Okay. And that's what I did when I was in elementary school into early middle school. And then I kind of stopped when I got hired at Publix and I got my first job. That was my first job. Or no, SeaWorld was my first job. And but I was always looking forward to working. But when I was too young to work, I had my little concession stand that I did.
I just love how your entrepreneurial gene expresses itself, and certainly how it expressed itself in the pathway to becoming a people's representative. That's really interesting because a lot of people think politics and business have nothing to do with each other. And actually, there's so much from your experience that I think our listeners can take away as best practice in the iterative process of being entrepreneurial, whether you're running your own entrepreneurial enterprise or you just need to show up as more entrepreneurial in what you're doing. So I want to fast forward a little bit to congratulations, you won and you've won re-election and you're a United States Congressman serving District 10. And like I said, I don't want to go into some of the politics part of it, but I do want to talk about one of the things we're focused on is becoming the human in the room as AI rolls through our world and disrupts everything, right? So I'm excited by AI. I think it's really cool, the capability we're going to get to just be more efficient. I use it every day. But I have to show up as a human to make it work the best that it can. Yeah. And we're hearing more and more that the workforce is going to really be full of people who are highly skilled at using technology and that the technology will replace some jobs, but there'll be a preciousness around who knows how to use it. And having fluency around reading a room, situational awareness, exercising good judgment, understanding your brand and how to leverage it personally, navigating intergenerational leadership models are becoming more and more important as we move into this highly automated kind of future. I can't think of a better theater for complex intergenerational navigation than the United States Congress. Tell us about what you've had to do. You said, there was a moment when people took me seriously.
Yeah.
What was that moment? What were you doing?
yeah.
And what do you do to be taken seriously as the youngest member of Congress? Because
Yeah.
Gen Z has a PR problem, right? So does my generation. I think all the generations do now. There's friction in all the way the generations are showing up. But we're hearing increasingly like, hey, maybe we should have mandatory retirement age for senators and congress people because we see people hanging out too long in Washington, right? So with respect, but hanging out. And how do we refresh the leadership model there so that we can see more diversity of thought,
Exactly.
So in our organization, we build teams on 5 factors of diversity. One is age, one is ethnicity, one is gender, one is business size and business type, because we want the whole watershed covered in who needs what, right? And I'd say we're doing better as a country on representation of those types of factors. I would say age is probably one where we're not doing as well.
Yeah, we're not, especially in Congress. I mean, Gen Z and millennials make up a third of the electorate now. A third of the electorate.
But they're not showing up to vote.
But Well, yeah, they could vote in higher numbers. Actually, young people voting is really a global issue.
Yeah.
I've learned this a lot in my travels recently, and actually, America has some of the best.
This is my
voting.
call to action. Young people, you need to get registered to vote.
Exactly.
You need to vote.
Get registered to vote. Go vote. There's also a lot of institutional barriers that push young people away from voting and from running for office as well. I mean, our race is definitely the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we outworked everyone, we did everything right. And then I'll always throw in that there's a little bit of luck there. There's a little bit of right place, right time, right things that are unexplainable. Not just because like Maxwell Frost is like, a singular, right? No, I think it's like because we built something strong and then there's something that is maybe a little unexplainable that I think the purpose of a legislator in our work is to bring people together to help legislate the unknown, the issues we know about and the issues we don't know about. And when we have we don't have every experience at the table, it means the legislation is going to be flawed.
Yeah.
And that's why legislative bodies are so important. And that's the issue with Congress right now, is obviously I'm still the only member of my generation in Congress. Now, to be fair, I'm the oldest of my generation, right? So when I ran for Congress, we had just gotten old enough to run. So, but in terms of young people being represented in Congress, we're not. We're really not at all. And there's a lot of institutional problems though here, campaign finance issues, the way campaigns work, the fact that it's really difficult for working families to be able to get represented in Congress because a lot of people can't afford to do it. I mean, that's why a lot of people in Congress.
That's where the $5 donation comes in.
Exactly. And a lot of people, and there's also the personal aspect. A lot of people in Congress are already wealthy. And so when they did their campaign, they could afford to not like work a job, right? Because they had money already. If I had a family, I would have dropped out maybe, I think 4 months in, after my rent went up so high and I had to move and all of this. If I had other people that I had to take care of, I would have quit that campaign. And we don't track the people who drop out because of financial problems. So there's personal barriers there that make it very difficult for families to be represented and for young families to be represented. And I think there's a lot of work we need to do there. I will say, though, that I'm not one of these people that think like we need to get all the old people out and have all young people. It needs to be representative.
Well, I'm not saying that either, to be clear. Sure. Yeah.
I just because I'm the youngest, I need to always say this, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be representative. But the issue I find is not like old versus young in terms of age, or I like to say seasoned versus young, is more it's actually more like how long you've been there.
Okay.
And that's the issue. Like, I believe in term limits, right? And the reason I believe in it is I got into Congress at 25 years old. Let's say
Man, you could be like a Jesse Helms at the end of all this thing.
I mean, the way this system works, conceivably, if the people of the Florida 10th wanted me to be there, I could do this thing for 50 to 60 years.
Yeah.
Right? No one should be a member of Congress for 50 to 60 years. And when I bring up term limits, a lot of people bring
If
me
you
up as
are, we're going to get some great highways in Central Florida. I mean, bring it on, right?
a lot of people bring me up as an example when I talk about term limits. They're like, look at you, you're young. That means if we had term limits, you'd still be very young and you wouldn't be able to be there. And I said, but that's the point. It's not about the age as much, right? But it's about how long you're here. We actually need folks who have recently gone through retirement to be represented in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually need older folks in Congress that are new to the institution,
Right.
who bring a fresh outlook to what it means to grow old now, and bring that to the institution.
Yeah.
And it's just different growing up in Congress and growing old while you're in Congress as well. So that's part of the problem, is it's like how long you're there. And I think like we need we just I don't like to use the word revolving door because I don't want it to seem like it's
Yeah.
but I do think that
We do
need to
benefit from some institutional knowledge of incumbency.
exactly.
So when we're thinking about cheat codes, we can give our listeners and viewers about how you, and I don't want to name names, but you're dealing with party leadership in their 80s. You know, you're dealing with people who are in Congress who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
I look like a spring chicken compared to these people, right? This is awesome. But
Yeah.
what are your methodologies? What are things our listeners or viewers could take away from your experience of,
Yeah.
hey, when I'm prepping for a meeting with a senior leader in his or her 70s, this is how I dress, think, communicate.
Yeah.
What are those cheat codes?
So, and I have a lot of experience in working and just being in a workspace with people much older than me because, like I mentioned, I got started working in politics right out of high school. It wasn't people in their 80s and 70s, but it was like people in their 30s, people in their 40s, right?
Mhm.
And I was
Or
like
maybe even in their 50s, as old as me.
Yeah. Well, in Congress, your 50s is like your 20s.
Yeah.
Your 40s, you're like a teen. If you're in your 30s, you're like, you're like 10 or 12,
Right.
13. Me, I'm like a fetus.
Yeah.
That's
Congressional
like that's
fetus.
like I'm like, and so I had to, when I was working on campaigns and I started becoming a field director
Mhm.
and I started managing people at like 20 years old, 21 years old, much older than me, who've been doing this longer than me. I had a lot of trial and error. I had to figure it out. I had a lot of bad situations, right? People just did not respect me at all, didn't do what I was saying. There were times where maybe I came across too, maybe I was a little too forward, trying to assert myself.
Mhm.
There were times where I was like, maybe I need to withdraw a bit.
Did you have
A little
times
bit
when you
more.
texted something that you should have picked up the phone and called? Maybe, or did a
I'm more of a
face-to-face
caller.
meeting? Oh, you're
I'm more of a
caller?
caller personally.
Okay,
Yeah.
top tip.
Yeah, I'm more of a
Pick up the
caller.
phone.
I just feel like if it's 10 hours of texting, or I can accomplish the same thing in like a 2-minute conversation, which is usually
Love
what
it.
it is. I try to do the conversation, especially on campaigns, because there's just so much going
Yeah.
on. I'm just more of a caller personally. But there was a lot of problems. There was a lot of issues I had to work through. And I worked through it over the course of like 6 to 7 campaigns of me managing people older than me, figuring out the right way to handle things. And I feel like I got to a place where not that I like cracked the code, but I figured it out.
Mhm.
How I needed to conduct myself to, of course, assert myself as a leader and manager and personal responsibilities, but also gain the respect that I knew I had to earn simply because of my age. And it's a messed up thing, but it's the reality of the situation.
Mhm.
And me
We
saying
have a
it's
lot of
messed up.
young viewers and listeners
Yeah.
that we need to start with that acknowledgement
Yeah.
and then work around it with
And
a
we
plan.
work around it,
Yep.
and like hopefully there's a future where it doesn't exist, but it exists right now.
Yeah.
And I realized that going into Congress. And so for me, when I first got into office after the orientation, those first few months, I made it a point to set up coffees and dinners with all of the oldest members and the
Smart
people who've been there the
play.
longest. And I met up with them and I just asked them questions about their life, what advice they had for me. I didn't speak about myself unless they asked me about myself. And it was a very heads down, just learning situation for me. And the reason I did that is because I knew that naturally, I would naturally form relationships with all the younger members.
Mhm.
These are the people like, you want to go to a concert, want to grab a drink after the meeting.
Right.
That stuff would happen more naturally. So I knew I'd have to make more of an effort and put a foot forward to really build relationships with members who have been there for a while, with a wealth of knowledge I can pull from. but also helps me politically, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first person I brought to this district that
Mm-hmm.
is a member of Congress, Maxine Waters,
Mm-hmm.
right? She's the first person I brought. And she doesn't really travel to a lot of other districts like that. And so the fact that she said yes meant a lot to me. But she's someone who, like, she gives me a lot of advice. She's one of my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Clyburn in South Carolina. We
Mm-hmm.
really bonded over the fact that when I worked for the ACLU, I lived in Charleston for a year and I traveled all around South Carolina. And he
Mm-hmm.
invited me to go to one of his events there. In the Black Caucus meetings, I sit next to him. Why do I sit next to him? Because he's always, when the meeting's going on, under his breath, he's just like talking about history and stuff. So I'm just like
Mm-hmm.
getting all this knowledge. And I have great relationships with all the younger members as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that first impression, it's all based on the
First
first
impressions are so important
it's
for
all the
anyone
first
who's
impression.
in an underserved population, or if
Yeah.
they're younger, if you got to do the work around that first impression sets the tone.
It's that first impression
Yep.
because I realized, look, coming in as young as I am, progressive, all like, I knew there was a stigma with me coming in, right? He's here to be loud, not to get stuff done. He thinks he knows everything. Like I had that all in my mind, which isn't who
Mhm.
I am at all. But I knew, and I asked myself, how, if I thought that about someone, what things would they need to do to have like what things would they have to do for me to kind of dispel
So I
the
think
myth?
the key for you in navigating that is self-awareness and a sense of
Very
wonder,
much.
right?
Yeah.
So those are two key takeaways for
Yeah.
our listeners. That was really smart. What did you learn in some of those meetings? What were some of the surprising things that
Yeah.
you learned in meetings with the older members?
I learned so much. One thing I always think about is um there was a meeting I had with Nancy Pelosi, who was one of the people I actually met with the most.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got in, she was still speaker before I
Mm-hmm.
was announced. And so she was running the Capitol, and so she would host these dinners in Statuary Hall. And she held one for all the freshmen, and I show up and my nameplate is right next to her at her table.
Ooh.
And so I sat down, I'm like, "Ooh, okay, yeah." And we spoke the whole time, and then we had a meeting afterwards. And the question I asked her is, I was like, I'm curious about the relationship between a member of Congress and an administration when it's the same party, but when you want to push them on stuff, when you want to praise them for stuff, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Asking someone who, no matter what your party is, she is someone who's really good at that job. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she's really good at that job. That's why she's done it so long. And the advice she gave me is that we have to always view ourselves independently, separately, and quote, co-equal
Mm-hmm.
to the other branches of government. And the way that the presidency oftentimes asserts itself to members of Congress is with the awe of the presidency.
Right.
And she always reminded me to remember the awe of the people's house.
Wow.
Even the little physical things. It's bigger. There's more of us. We're more representative.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked all this because I wanted to make sure I wanted to get this Office of Gun Violence Prevention started, and I introduced a bill to do it, but I knew the bill wouldn't get passed, and so I wanted President Biden to do it through executive order, but I needed to push him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to do it in the right way, and I was so new.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, how can we make this happen? And the advice she gave me on how to leverage those relationships, it's how we made it happen, and he ended up doing it.
We just followed the Nancy Pelosi playbook, and boom,
Yeah,
boom,
or
boom.
just
There
like,
you go.
like, and it was, I needed that advice because I didn't know, I came from being an activist and an organizer.
Very
And
different than
so,
governing.
yeah. And I mean, there's transfer value, but there's some things I didn't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I didn't know. And so I love that I have both sets of knowledge in my mind because I use both. I used my activist and organizing skills to help organize outside groups to help push my inside ask from the outside. And we coordinated together and we made this thing happen. But I don't think I would have been able to do it if I didn't have those conversations with older members and if I didn't have that experience from being an advocate holding a sign, right? All of it came together to build what we wanted to build.
Well, and I think staying open, right? So I think what Nancy Pelosi was saying is, I want to be open to being near the youngest member of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying is, I want to be close to that fount of wisdom and knowledge and
Yeah.
experience. And I think for our listeners, taking away that best practice of don't look at that person as a boomer or, some label. Let's go past that and see what we can learn from each other and build a better model for everybody.
Yeah, things are rarely absolute, and so for me, like, and I walk into Congress, one of my favorite things to do is I like the people watch, and I'll just sit in the back, and you watch everybody just talking, and especially being an organizer, I would think of Congress, and most people think of Congress and think horrible things, But sitting there, I look at everyone, I'm like, it's a beautiful thing, and I encourage people, if you ever go to DC, try to get into the gallery while votes are going on.
Okay.
Most of the time, there's no one on the floor.
Right.
But when votes are going on, and look at what's going on, it looks like a bunch of people talking, but they're all organizing. Everyone's like, can you get on my bill? I need this for my constituents. Can you do this? What do you think about this? It's like a little fishbowl of humans advocating for things they believe in, and it's a really beautiful thing. And we're not chief executives, right? We're not running the operation of a city, town, or federal government. What we're doing is we are advocates, and something Nancy Pelosi says that is a great way to think about it is the duty of the position is in the title, representative.
Yeah.
That is the job.
Yeah.
We represent.
Yeah.
We're not chief executives. We are representatives.
Yeah.
And one of us can't do anything, but the total of us is what gives the body the power. And actually, my colleague Jamie Raskin, a lot of people say co-equal to the presidency, and Jamie Raskin would tell you actually Congress is the most powerful branch of government, as stated by the founders. And the reason why it's the most powerful branch of government is because we come directly from the people.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
All right, so we have 2 lightning round questions to close today. The first one is, tell me about a photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz. How was that?
So I didn't know who she was when that photo shoot was scheduled.
That probably helps.
Well, I didn't know. I was uncultured. And I was actually right around here doing a Spectrum News 13 interview. Mm-hmm. And we were running late doing the interview. And my campaign manager's blowing up my phone. He's like, dude, you got to get over here now. The photographer's here. And I'm like, the photographer can wait like a minute.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I'm doing like News 13. I'm doing News 13. Let me finish this and we'll get there in a minute. So we pull up and I see this big black SUV, and at this point I've done a few photo shoots, so I'm like, okay. And I walk in and her assistant comes up to me and all this staff is here, and I'm like, oh, this photographer is a principal. This is a principal. She has a staff, she has all this. So then I started realizing oh God. And she was sitting at my kitchen table kind of waiting for us, and she gets up very gracefully and she's like, hey, Congressman. And she had seen all the photos I've ever taken in my life, because she says there's a photo on your Facebook in 2015, or she brought up the year, and she was like, you were wearing a pair of pants. I want you to wear those pants. Where are those pants? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, can I see your closet? And I brought her to my closet.
Annie Leibovitz is in your closet?
She came to my closet.
Oh my gosh.
She starts going through my clothes. She could put, these are the pants. These are the pants. She had me hold the pants. And she pulls together my outfits, and she's like, do you mind wearing these things? I was like, yeah, I don't care. Yes, of course. So I put them on, and we did a photo shoot in my office. That's my home office, my old home. And then she was like, I really want to capture you at your drum set.
Okay.
And we go out, sit at the drum set, start playing. And she's like, unbutton your shirt, and I want to have it flowing. And she had her assistant with a leaf blower.
Oh my gosh.
Blowing at me. And she's like, just play, just go. And I'm like, okay. And I start playing outside, the leaf blower's going. And then she's like, I need more energy. And she goes, play again. I start playing again. And she starts yelling. And she goes, ah, ah, ah. And the leaf blower's going, and I'm playing. And it was really crazy. And then the photo shoot, came out great.
And when did you find out she was Annie Leibovitz? Annie Leibovitz.
Right after she left. I had I looked her up, and I was like, oh my God. I honestly, I told my campaign manager, dude, you should have prepped me. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew it was for Vogue, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
But I just thought, it was just a random photographer. But it was It was insane. And my girlfriend had captured a video of this moment I'm talking about, of me
Uh-huh.
playing the drums, her yelling, and the leaf blower. And I posted it on I posted it on Instagram. And then my campaign manager reaches out to me, freaked out. He's like, dude, in the contract, it says we can't post
I
like
was
BTS.
just about to say,
it was like, we can't post,
yeah.
we got to get rid of it. And I was like, damn. I was like, it's kind of blowing. People are liking it. I was like, ask them just to make sure. And she looked at it and she responded and said, I will allow it. I think it's a really cool video. So it's still up.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so
It's
great.
like one of the few Annie Leibovitz
I
BTS from a
love
cell
it.
phone you can see. So that was such a cool thing. And it just goes to what we were talking about before. Right after I won, it's like everything was so different, and and I do interviews now and stuff, but everything was at the same time
Yeah.
in the span of just a few months. And it's Vogue, and I was on the cover of Teen Vogue, and that photo shoot was 8 hours.
Oh my God, I don't have patience for that.
It was
I have
8
respect for
hours
models.
long.
I don't know how they do it.
No, and that one was insane. That was actually my first real
Did
big
you
photo
ever
shoot.
think you'd be on the cover of Teen Vogue?
I didn't, and they had someone come in and dress me. We did like 8 looks, and I brought my own clothes. I brought
You
like
didn't bring the Annie Leibovitz pants?
I didn't bring those. They were honestly kind of small on me, but she really wanted them, so I put them on. The photo she's talking about was like from like 10 years prior. But I brought like a Union bomber jacket, some random t-shirts, some like jeans, and some shoes to this Teen Vogue shoot. I was like, can we take some photos in my bomber jacket? And they're like, sure. So we did it in the front. And actually the editor, that was her favorite photo, and that ended up being
my gosh.
that's the cover.
That's
is
so
me
cool.
in my jacket that I brought.
That's so cool.
But it was so cool. And I remember when I went to orientation, I had this week where I had all these photo shoots and like The View and all this stuff I'm doing. I go to see my favorite band, the 1975. They shout me out from stage.
Oh, I love
the
1975.
Oh, that's my favorite band. Yeah,
okay, we're having an intergenerational moment
Oh,
here
yeah.
right now.
I grew up when I was in high school, my best friends and I were obsessed with them. So we've all seen them. We've seen them like 12 times.
12 times.
And when I won, I tweeted, I want to go see them on Thursday in DC. I had booked tickets. Win or lose, I was like, I'm going to go to DC and see them. And they gave me this huge like 5-minute shout out from the stage. It was crazy.
That's so nice.
And then I go to orientation, and I'm like a new member of Congress and all this. And I get home and I walk into my living room. I've been gone for like 10 days, but it's the craziest 10 days of my life. And I walk into my living room and I'm taken aback because I kind of forgot what my living room looked like. And I remember that feeling. I was like, and I told myself, I was like, this is how it happens.
Yeah.
This is how you start losing little parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Going to DC, your life, it's all different. And that moment for me, that's when I sat down with my campaign manager at the time and my chief of staff. And I was like, we have to build systems to keep me grounded to the community, because I'm not perfect and no one is. And like as leaders and politicians, you have to proactively set those methods of accountability in the people you hire, and the way that you allow community stakeholders to reach out to you, and the way you set that up.
To prevent Washington insideritis.
To prevent that. Even little things. I just knew that feeling I had. I hated that feeling.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that feeling since, because I think we've done a good job of being able to set it the right way. But I'm glad I had that feeling, because it was a huge slap in the face and wake up call to me.
Finally.
These are supposed to be rapid response.
What gives you hope?
What gives me hope? Honestly, being home, and like, when we're in DC, it's like there's obviously a lot going on. And a lot of times you can get your mind is like in that space. But then you come home and you're walking the street and people come up to you and thank you or want to talk to you about something. And it's like a hammer. It like breaks that DC bubble that sometimes you're in. And honestly, that's what gives me hope, is like the resilience of our people, that no matter what's going on, and things can be really bad, things can be really good, etc., but people are going to continue living and trying to find ways to live and provide for themselves and their families. And just meeting people and getting to learn more about the community gives me a lot of hope in the future of our area, our very young city and our very young area. And I don't mean young in terms of the people who live here. I mean, like, Orlando's a very young city.
It is.
And it's going to change a lot in the next 3 to 4 years. Our county government, our city government, a lot of things are changing. And it's it's a hopeful time for me in some weird ways, but in a hyper local sense. And that's what gives me hope, and music.
Love
music
it.
and food and love and all that. You know, all that makes Orlando what it is.
Congressman Frost, thank you for your service. Thank you for your time today. It's just been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.